Hi there, I'm Kim Vanell taking you through some of the things people are talking about and the stuff they're sharing around the world on Newsfeed today. Stories don't get much sadder than this one. It's about the dangers of America's crackdown on immigration. Everybody knows this picture. 50 years since it happened, Newsfeed heads back to the scene to find a party going on. Roll up if you're ready to learn. A classroom on wheels brings joy to kids who are stuck with nowhere to go. And we meet the owls that resort to martial arts to protect their privacy. The US Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency is once again in the headlines for all of the wrong reasons. If it's not separating children from their parents, they're now deporting people to countries they've never been to or where they don't speak the language. This is the case of Jimmy Aldaoud.
Delivering a posthumous message about how he ended up in Iraq after spending 40 years living in the United States, this would be Jimmy Aldaoud's final message to American immigration authorities.
And just 2.5 weeks ago, immigration agent pulled me over, said I'm going to Iraq. I begged them, I said, please, I've never seen that country, I've never been there. However, they forced me, I'm here now, and I don't understand the language, anything. I've been sleeping in the street, I'm diabetic, I take insulin shots, I've been throwing up, sleeping in the street, trying to find something to eat.
The agency responsible for sending Jimmy to Iraq is unrepentant about his death there. The US Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency argue that Mr. Aldaoud had 20 convictions spanning 2 decades, including assault with a dangerous weapon, domestic violence and home invasion. According to the agency, Aldaoud had absconded from the non-custodial supervision program for 4 months before being arrested for theft. ICE has been under fire over its handling of deportations. Religious figures and human rights groups have not held back on their criticisms of the agency.
We have an agency that was created after 2001 called ICE. It reminds me of the Gestapo. I'm old enough to remember the Gestapo in Europe. And we got it here now. This is unacceptable.
So why is the agency being compared to Nazis? Here's what it does. ICE arrests, detains and deports unauthorized immigrants already in the United States. Under its umbrella, it operates a smaller division called Homeland Security Investigations. They are tasked with pursuing criminals involved in drug trafficking, weapons smuggling, human trafficking, financial crimes and identity fraud. The third division of ICE is the Office of the Principal Legal Advisor. They assist agency employees and represent the government in immigration courts. Established in the post-9/11 world, a reorganisation happened with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency that now controls a $7 to $8 billion budget that employs 20,000 agents and runs nearly 200 detention centres. Jimmy Aldaoud was not in a detention centre. Human rights groups believe that the incident was entirely avoidable, and blame lays squarely in the hands of ICE teams who deported him.
Let's have a look now at some other things that caught our eye on social media. First up, Friday is Indigenous Peoples Day. It's a UN initiative to celebrate the world's 370 million Indigenous people. That's 5,000 cultures represented. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres took to Twitter to highlight how important it is to preserve these cultures. He said Indigenous languages are disappearing at an alarming rate, each one taking with it a cultural and intellectual heritage. The UN Human Rights Organization shared this video to mark the day, featuring the Waorani people of the Amazon. They had once had the largest territory of all indigenous Amazonians in Ecuador. But with oil extraction and logging, the Waorani have been forced into smaller and smaller pieces of land and deeper into the forest. The bond between man and dog is a special one. There is a reason they're called man's best friend. It's that relationship that a lobby group hoping to get New Zealanders to quit smoking is banking on. Quitline released this ad, which shows a good old Kiwi bloke, ciggy often in hand, and his trusty companion just going about their days. But over time, Doggo gets slower and more distant and just generally quite sad. Eventually, said Kiwi bloke takes the Doggo to the vet. We find out that when you smoke around your pets, they're twice as likely to get cancer. Tears were shed. "50 years ago, one of the most famous photos of a rock band was taken. I am, of course, talking about the Beatles walking across Abbey Road outside the famous recording studios in London. It became the cover of the album of the same name and one of pop culture's most recognisable shots. Simon McGregor joined Beatles fans for the party on Abbey Road.
It has long been a place of pilgrimage for serious Beatles fans, but on this anniversary, the crowds were bigger than ever. They were multinational and of all ages, those who were too young to have been there at the time, and plenty who probably were there in the 60s and enjoyed every minute of it. And from all four corners, camera crews and reporters jostled with fans to recreate that famous shot. August the 8th, 1969, the Fab Four nipping out from the Abbey Road studios for a quick photo shoot. Snapped by freelance photographer Ian McMillan. He was a friend of John Lennon's and stood on a stepladder for 5 minutes while a single policeman held back traffic to get the shot. It was Paul McCartney's idea. The fifth of 6 photos was chosen, the only one where the four looked in step. But pictures can be deceptive. By August 1969, the band were out of sync. They were arguing about money, and John Lennon's girlfriend Yoko Ono was causing serious stress. They finished the album, but it was the last one they ever recorded. The following year, the Beatles walked away from each other forever. 50 years later, the shot and the album it was used for still inspire. So much so, the police had to get involved at this normally quiet corner of northwest London.
I come from Casablanca, Morocco. We used to listen to the Beatles record, and I started to play guitar, listening to Beatles.
And yes, I'm totally amazed at the turnout, to be honest. We did it 10 years ago, and it was mad. This is madder still, I think.
It's testament to their legacy when you look around here and you see a simple crosswalk, what it's become. It's like a meeting place for all these Beatle people around the world. And I don't know if it's just bias, which I'm sure part of it is, but everyone's so friendly, where the only purpose of it is to spread that positivity.
And then the icing on the cake. A nearly look-alike Beatles band turned up in John's old Rolls-Royce. The purists might have winced a little, but by this stage there was so much love in the air, no one really minded.
Let's go around the world now for some other stories you need to know this Friday. If you're serious about doing your part to help fight climate change, it's time to put down the stake. The United Nations has confirmed what many already knew, that by moving to a more plant-based diet, we can boost the planet's ability to fight the current climate crisis. Animals you see need more land and water, causing more emissions of heat-trapping gases. But if you're not ready to go full vegan, that's okay. The World Resources Institute says simply cutting out about half of the red meat you consume in a week is roughly the same as going vegetarian, because unlike vegans, vegetarians still eat animal products like dairy and eggs. Fast food chains are already adapting, rolling out meatless burgers. Burger King, for one, knows its customer base targeting young male gamers. It is partnering up with FaZe Clan. I hadn't heard of them, but apparently they're a famous group of gamers. All to announce its new Impossible Whopper burger. It's like a normal Whopper, except the flame-grilled patty is from Impossible Foods. Their meatless patties are made from plants that bleed like the real thing. It truly is impossible to tell the difference. Google has launched augmented reality maps, replacing the 2D maps you're used to with a real-time overlay of reality using your phone's camera. It's called Live View, and it's designed to be used for walking navigation. It uses what Google calls a visual positioning system. Now that matches your location from your phone's GPS to the data points it has from those trillions of photos it took for Google Street View. And voila, an augmented reality overlay, meaning no more wondering which direction that little blue arrow wants you to go in. Apple has teamed up with a pharmaceutical company and a health tech startup to find out whether our personal devices could one day help diagnose Alzheimer's disease. For the study, they took a group of 113 older people and compiled data from pretty much every Apple device you can think of, using their smartphones, iPads, Apple Watches, sleep monitoring devices, and so on. From that, they could assess a lot about a person, including motor control, mood, and how they use language. The study suggests all that data may help detect dementia and Alzheimer's earlier. The catch, we'd have to be okay with giving all of that personal data away. Sprawling megacities and the constant light they put out are having an impact on wildlife. Birds are the most obvious to suffer, but like everything, there's a flow-on effect throughout the natural world. Take a look at this.
Skyscrapers, fancy illuminated buildings, mesmerizing city lights. Did you know that they might be killing animals? Artificial lights have been making our lives so much easier for years, but here's how light pollution has been making a huge ecological impact. Artificial lights are often lethal for birds. Migrating birds are lured by the lights coming from high buildings, likely mistaking them for light gliding through trees. This causes them to crash into windows or buildings. 600 million birds die like this every year in the US alone. And then there are sea turtles. When sea turtle hatchlings come out of their eggs, they crawl their way into the sea, following the light of the moon shining off the water. Artificial lights confuse them, making it really hard for them to find their way. And if they fail to do so, they get dehydrated, overheated, and become easy prey for predators. Remember Nemo, aka clownfish? It's also under threat. Scientists have discovered clownfish are able to spawn when exposed to artificial light, but not a single egg can hatch because their biological cycles depend on the darkness of the night. There are many more whose sleeping cycles, breeding cycles, migration cycles, and feeding cycles are disrupted. But we can't just get rid of the lights, right? So here's what we can do. Use lights that are fully shielded instead of ones that point upwards. Block excessive light by installing window coverings. Use motion-censored outdoor lights. Use yellow or red lights when possible. Turn off all unnecessary lights. And besides, what's more important? This or this?
A classroom bus is rolled up for children stuck on the US-Mexico border. More than 500,000 people have been stopped by Border Patrol trying to cross into the state since October last year. People who are escaping from poverty, violence, or both. And for the families on the border who are waiting it out, at least now some of their kids have somewhere to go.
Así como deprimida y ahorita ya se desenvuelve más y juega más
más adaptados, no tan marginados ellos mismos. A veces como no pueden expresar lo que sienten, ellos solo se aíslan y ahora no.
Es ese interés por el estudio, el interés por ser personas de bien, por ser la diferencia. Queremos instituir en cada uno de ellos la bondad, el amor, la felicidad y el apoyarse el uno a los otros. Aquí lo que estamos haciendo es creando un mundo donde ellos se sientan seguros y simplemente puedan ser niños.
And finally, it's animals doing stuff, and we have some apparently quite camera-shy owls. These two little dudes are stars of the Hawk Conservancy Trust in the UK and as such have a hidden camera keeping an eye on them. But the owls are smart and the supposedly hidden camera wasn't getting past them. So after eyeing it up, as you can see here, one of them takes a run. We're going to have to wait for it and privacy is restored. And That's it from the Newsfeed team. Reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions at Kim Vanel. You'll find us 24/7 on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Follow, subscribe, we'll see you tomorrow.